Yes, today we are delving deep into the occult with a horror movie review of the movie Tarot, a film that promised to blend the mystical with the macabre. Now, did it succeed in casting a spell? Let's find out. Alright, so this movie released in May of 2024. I believe it was May 3rd. And it is so disliked right now. It is insane. Almost immediately, this movie got instantly bombarded with dislikes. It was insane. It's only an hour and a half, so that is really good. And its total box office earnings were 49.1 million. Now, I heard the bad reviews, and I immediately did not want to go see this movie. And I'm gonna be honest, I think a lot of the reviews are adults that are mainly mad that the movie isn't what they wanted out of it, even though it never advertised to be that way. When I saw the advertisements, I just kind of thought it was like kind of a spooky ghost movie. But recently we've been seeing a couple of other reviewers. I've actually watched some of their videos, and they're mad that it wasn't gory. Now, I agree, it was not gory at all. There was barely any fun with the kills, but I don't think it ever advertised to be gory. And this movie is a PG-13 horror film. And I do agree that they could have played more into the gore. I always find myself disappointed when watching a PG-13 horror film, but as a PG-13 horror film, I thought this was pretty good. There is honestly a lot of just kind of death scenes that are, jump scary. And there are definitely some kills in here that I really like. And in my opinion, this movie never once advertised to be a bloody, disgusting, gory film. But people treat it like everything has to be bloody and gory to be a good movie. And honestly, I'm not saying this movie's perfect, but don't go into it thinking it's something it's not. It is not gory, it's not bloody. These kills are very just, that's what they are. Now, let's just start out with a little synopsis of the story. Now, don't worry, this isn't really gonna, give you any spoilers, but basically, Tarot follows a group of friends who, through a reckless game involving a cursed deck of tarot cards, unleash a sinister force as the cards foretell their doom. They must race against time to break the curse. Now, I think this is honestly a perfect way to sum up this story. It's kind of very reminiscent, in my opinion, to something like Ouija. I also think it's very reminiscent of a Rings movie. They kind of... Okay, so I'm going to say minor spoilers right now on some stuff. Some of the things that I really didn't like about the film. I'm going to start out with stuff I didn't really like. There is a lot of just stuff they expect you to know. Not enough development in the characters for me to actually care about anything that happens to them, except for the main guy and girl in the film. And that's not great, especially when your whole movie isn't gory, isn't bloody. So the only way for you to get any feeling out of it would be for you to basically have that main character be really, really good. Now, there's literally no gore. That is another bad. I know it didn't advertise for gore, but in a movie, any kind of horror movie, even The Conjuring has more gore than this. So I really think in the future they should definitely add a gory version. Maybe on release, give two versions of the movie. I don't know. One during the day for children, one at night for adults. I don't know. Just some crazy ideas here. Another thing I didn't like was the story. There are parts in the story that are just so god-awful, it is really hard to overlook. And I do think the actual, Cursed Tarot deck's really good idea. But man, there are definitely a bunch of parts in this film where I'm just like, this doesn't make sense. Something's wrong here. Okay, this doesn't make sense. There's a part in this film, literally, where they are talking about how they know who's next because of how they read their horoscopes. But then at the end, all three of them just get chased. It's like, well, shit. Technically, none of them were next. And also, the other thing that's really, really strange here, guys, is all of the characters, for the most part, end up dying in these, scary ways. And one guy who is said he's gonna die then doesn't die, and they even show him dying. So I'm just super confused as to how Paxton survives this. Um, and yeah, now the one entertaining part I will say for this movie is seeing the guy from Spider-Man No Way Home, and all the Tom Holland Spider-Mans, the sidekick dude Ned, in a horror film. I thought that was really fun to see, and definitely something I never thought I would see. Um, and honestly, the premise is super promising of this movie. Like, tarot cards offer a rich tapestry of symbolism and potential for a horror film. Unfortunately, the tarot only scratches the surface of this potential. The film creates a sense of unease throughout it, but it relies heavily on jump scares and predictable plot twists, which does hurt this movie quite a bit. There are so many times in here where I knew exactly what was going to happen next. And because she reads the horoscopes at the beginning, if you have even a base knowledge of like remembering what she said, you're going to know everything very laid out. And that's not exactly great. The atmosphere is certainly a very creepy atmosphere with the use of shadows and dark colors and unsettling sounds. Um, they really do design a full chilling ambience of surrounding. And I will say, however, the characters are a little flat and very underdeveloped, making it very difficult to care about what the fuck happens to them. You kind of just are like, oh, okay, they can die. I don't really care. And honestly, there were some parts in this. The acting was just downright fucking awful. Um, there's a part in this where the girl who pulls the magician card is getting like sawed in half in this like super supposed to be a gory scene, but because it's PG-13, they can't put gore, and so when she gets sawed in half, she's kind of just and that's it. And it's like, well, great. But by far, in my opinion, the biggest issue with tarot is it is so predictable. There are so many points where you know exactly what's going to follow because they read the horoscopes, and the main characters also feel the need to remind you what the horoscopes are every 5 seconds, which doesn't help with the predictability. Um, the plot follows a well-worn, very well-worn horror formula. Um, you see this type of curse thing where like, oh, we bring in an expert and then the expert dies and then all this stuff a lot. Rings does it all the time. You also have movies like VHS that does it. You have a ton of movies. I'm thinking just like off the top of my head, Smile kind of does it even. It's just one of those things, like the whole cursed plot is too overdone. We need to stop the cursed stuff. Um, just really stop it because it's getting way too overdone. Um, and a lot of the twists in this film are unfortunately just super easily anticipated. You're like, oh, that's gonna happen. There are a few moments of genuine like suspense and surprise, but they're overshadowed by the film's lack of originality, which is really, really unfortunate. One plus I do want to give them, the monster designs. Monster designs are creepy and kind of cool. The High Priestess is a really good example of a good monster design. The Jester, or the Fool, being another one. The Hangman's kind of interesting as well. Kind of looks like Gollum a little bit. And then you got characters as well, such as the Magician, really cool character design. The Devil, what you would expect. But yeah, there's also, I have a big issue when some expert of the field comes in and then dies immediately. Why in the fuck are they dying immediately? They are the experts in the field. If you give a waiter, a pro, cook, let's say, a pro cook and a beginner cook, the pro cook will way outshine the beginner cook. It should be the same in these movies. I don't understand why they feel the need to kill off the experts immediately. It does not make for a good film. It actually makes for a huge plot hole. please fix that in any upcoming film. Now, I do realize this is the debut of, I believe, 2 directors. Fix it, because that is a stupid thing that horror movies do all the time that makes no sense. Don't do that in your horror film. Now, this definitely did have a huge potential, as I've been saying, for a very unsettling, very uneasy horror film. Not gory, but very unsettling. Unfortunately, it falls short in almost every way of what it promises. While it offers a few scares and a decent atmosphere, it ultimately fails to deliver a compelling story or any memorable characters. In fact, the only character that is memorable is Ned, and that is solely because I like the dude as an actor. I'm honestly, very controversial on this movie because it both is great and horrible all in one. It gives you a lot that's really good, and if you're not sick of the horror formula, yes, it works. But the acting is so bad. The storytelling's subpar. You get very predictable plot twists and all of this, and there's no blood or gore. It honestly lacks more than it gives. But the monsters are really cool. So if you get a good kick out of seeing some cool monsters, you might like this film. It's on Netflix right now. I would go watch it there if I were you guys. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below of this film. Did you watch it? What's your thoughts? Another thing that I will say really quickly, when comparing this up against a rated R film, it won't stand up. I don't understand why people feel the need to make PG-13 horror. I don't think it's anywhere near as good as a rated R horror film. And chances are, if you're letting your kid watch a horror film, period, they'll be allowed to watch any horror film they want. Except for maybe the exception of Saw, Terrifier, stuff like that. But for the most part, I think if a parent's letting their kid watch horror, you can't really lock them out of other horror. It's kind of just one of those things. Oh, all horror is allowed now. And there's so much, issues with that. And I don't see the point of making a PG-13 horror film, honestly. I mean, think of it from a standpoint of being a parent. If my kid watches Tarot, would I let them watch it? Yeah. And it's rated R. Stuff like that. It's very minuscule. And honestly, a lot of films are doing this now where they try to be PG-13 so they can have all the audiences. But all you're doing is making the adults hate your films. And the adults are the ones who go to horror films. And teenagers. It's not 5-year-olds, it's not 6-year-olds, it's not 10-year-olds, it's not 13-year-olds. And all of the 10, 13-year-olds that do watch horror are going to the bigger horror films. Why are you making a PG-13 horror film? I have so many issues with that. Then you also have the fact, let's compare it to another PG-13 horror film. Right? Let's say, for instance, Five Nights at Freddy's. Five Nights at Freddy's was never a kid-friendly game. Up until Security Breach, it was never once a kid-friendly game. After Security Breach, they were like, oh, we're kid-friendly now. I don't think for 1 second that movie should have been PG-13. I think you really need to delve way deep. Either, if you're going to make it PG-13, it better have some amazing CGI or amazing practical effects to make it just a wow. And the only part I actually enjoyed of Five Nights at Freddy's movie was the cameos we got from Matt Pat, and I believe Kai Cenat as well. That was the only part I enjoyed. The rest of the film, though, in my opinion, was just super meh. It was mid-tier at best. Story was pretty good, but Five Nights at Freddy's has always had strong story. But when you compare something like Tarot to Five Nights at Freddy's, I enjoyed Tarot more by all means because they actually had some decent scares, and Five Nights at Freddy's just didn't even have any scares, I'm not going to lie. It was pretty lame, but yeah, that is my opinion. What did you guys think? I'm going to give Tarot for my final rating a 4 out of 10. It was not great by any means, but it was definitely not as bad as people are making it out to be. There are, amazing atmosphere and a few effective scares, but it missed so much opportunity. Did you guys watch Tarot? What did you think? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you are new. Hit that notification bell for more horror reviews, and I will see you all next time. Peace out, and have a great rest of everyone's day. Bye, guys!